Hello, howdy, and welcome to your first interactive project in TouchDesigner, the software that I would marry if people in society would let me marry software, but it won't. This is TouchDesigner. When you open up TouchDesigner, it will open up its default project. And here's a few things that you can do in TouchDesigner to navigate around. Let's go over that. So if you click on the open area and drag, you drag around your whole network. If you use your middle mouse scroll, you can scroll in and out. And by the way, if you're using a laptop, hook up a mouse to it with a middle mouse scroll wheel button. You need a 3-button mouse to work with TouchDesigner. I mean, you don't need it, but come on, you need it. So scrolling in and out, you can actually go into certain operators by scrolling into them. So this kind of operator right here, the Go1, if I just scroll in at it, it will actually take me inside of it. If I scroll out, it will take me out. If I scroll in and I want to go out immediately, I can hit U on my keyboard, the U key for up, and it will take me back out. Yay! But this is kind of what the interface looks like. You can right click, you can center click, and we'll talk about all this kind of stuff as we go. For now, I'm gonna hover over my actual gridded area. I'm gonna right click and drag to get these marching ants kind of bounding box. And I'm gonna surround all of these, let go, all of these operators, and I'm gonna hit delete because I don't wanna look at them. I'm gonna do an actual project. Over to the left here, we have our palette. This palette window has a bunch of fun stuff you can play with, like user interface stuff and tools. We're going to exit out though, just to have some more real estate space. One thing to note about TouchDesigner, it is a real-time rendering software. It renders things in real time. So you'll notice down here there's this play button, this like actual little timeline. It plays a 10-second loop, and you can pause it or play it, and spacebar will pause and play. So if suddenly something's not working or not moving or not doing what it's supposed to do, you probably accidentally paused it. So make sure that it's in play. All right, so welcome to TouchDesigner. Now we have a blank starting area, and we can get started in creating some really cool stuff. So what we're going to create is an audio reactive blah, 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 blah. Yeah, sometimes you stumble through stuff, and I'm just going to leave the blah blahs in because I'm human and you love it. But we're going to create an audio reactive project right now, and we're going to do it to our microphone. So one of the first things I need to do is bring in my microphone. Now, to do this project, you need to have some sort of audio in device. Now, that could be your webcam. That will work great. It could be an actual, oh, hi, Adobe Creative Cloud. Thank you. I don't need to know that. So yeah, it could be it could be a microphone that's hooked up, an audio interface, whatever it is, solid. But you need something like that. So make sure you're using something with a webcam on it at least so you can actually bring in audio. So the first thing we need to do is bring in a piece of audio. And so we need an operator to do that. What's an operator? Well, let me tell you about him a little bit. Let's go ahead and click the Tab key on our keyboard. This brings our operator create dialog, op create dialog. This is our menus of operators. So we have a few different kinds. Let's start all the way left to the comp. Comps are compositions. They're kind of like folders or containers or tools. These will have things like cameras, 3D objects. These are pretty awesome things here. So comp, then we have tops. We have comps, tops, chops, sops, mats, stats, and custom. Custom we're not going to worry about. They make them rhymey. I think they tried to be helpful, but oh my gosh, it gets confusing early on. So tops are texture operators. What we're using with a texture operator are things like video or visual adjustment effects. So these are things that adjust 2D pixels. So the actual video on the video screen kind of a thing. My alarm's going off, no big. Next we have chops, channel operators. Now these are for adjusting and playing with a kind of data and information that comes through channels. So like audio will have a left and right channel. Those two channels would come in through a chop. Then we have SOPs, surface operators. So think of surface like an actual table has a surface, three-dimensional things have surfaces. This tends to be 3D objects and effects and things like that that you use with 3D objects. These are very intensive on your computer's CPU, just know that, but they're awesome. Then we have mats, material operators. So materials, so if you have a surface operator, a table, you want that table to have a nice veneer on it. These are things that you actually use to put a material onto objects. Finally, we have DAT, or data operators. These have things like tables and expressions, scripting, actually doing Python coding, bringing in data from outside sources. So this is a category of stuff that I only recently started using like a lot, and since I have, I love them, but it takes a bit. But we'll use it today. All right, custom. There's nothing under custom, but that's because you make them custom. So we're going to go back to CHOP, the green one, C-H-O-P, channel operators, because we want to bring in an audio device. Now, when you're selecting this op create dialog, and let's say you accidentally got out of it, just hit tab. Tab will bring it right up. Let's go to CHOP, and I can just start typing in what I'm looking for. So I know I want an audio something, an audio device. So audio space device, automatically your cursor is going to be up here in the search menu, so you can start typing in what you want and it will kind of gray everything out. And there we go, audio device in. It will highlight what you're kind of typing in. Now if you misspell, it won't work well, and I misspell all the time. You learn. So I'm going to go ahead and click on audio device in, so to bring in audio to our project. And when I click on it, it's going to give me this outline, and I can drop this down wherever I want it. So I just dropped that audio device in down on my network. Now I can click and drag, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit with my scroll wheel. If you notice, oh, that's my voice. Yep, that's my voice. So it's already getting the audio from my default audio device, which is on my webcam. So when I click on an actual operator, so right here, an operator or a node, I'll end up calling them both. You'll notice that up here in the right, we get this panel here that has all of these parameters to it, or properties. So, and it's a good thing to remember panel, properties, parameter, because to make this thing appear and disappear, you hit the P key on your keyboard. I'm just hitting P, and it's making it appear and disappear. Nice. Now, before I actually go too far, I forgot to do something very important. And that's to save this project and to set it up in a folder, because TouchDesigner references things within the folder that the project file is in. So before I go any further, let's go up to File, boop, 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 Create Project Folder. So if I click on that, this will give me an option to create a new folder with everything in the project in it. So Create Project Folder, so that was File, Create Project Folder. Desktop, you can actually change where it's going to on here. I'm going to go ahead and just put desktop. I'm going to put new, so project folder. I'm going to name this interactive audio thingy. Nice. I'm going to rename my file from new project. If I click on that, it will name it interactive audio thingy. And you can make folders within that folder for audio, movies, images, geometry, or channels that you save. I'll click them all for now because why not? It doesn't take up much space. And I'm going to click Create. And when I create it, you'll notice it has brought up the folder. So here's my folder. Let's go back here and hit Command S to save. Interactive audio thingy. Click Save. All right, and now let's just bring that folder back up. And you'll see interactive audio thingy right there. Perfect. Now, if I bring in any images or movies, I can put them into this folder and it will automatically be able to reference them and know where they're at, even if I move the project folder around. All right, let's go back to the project. So every now and then I'm going to say hit Command S, Command S, Command S, and you'll notice up here it's changing the number. Thingy 3, Command S, thingy 4, and if I go back to my project folder, it will save this kind of the most recent version of it and has a backup folder saving old versions in case you need to go back. It automatically does that, and that's wonderful. All right, so now let me take a sip of my coffee. I have my audio device in. Now I'm going to click on this. Some people might not have their audio showing up. Oh no, what do? Well, first make sure that your audio device is connected, and then over here in audio device in, there's this thing called driver. So what driver, what sound driver are you going to use? I have mine on the default, that works. Device, this is the thing you want to look for. The default device. So if I click this open, I have microphone, HD webcam. That's what I'm using. If I had my Zoom hooked up, it would say Zoom H5 as well, and I could go between them and use whichever I want. So I'm going to make sure I have microphone, HD webcam selected. Make sure you're actually selecting the audio input you want to use. You can make it error if missing, things like that. There's a ton of settings, like mono, you can change it to stereo. And now look, we have 2 channels for audio, left and right channel. I'm going to put it back to mono because I'm only worried about 1 channel. Cool. Rate 44,100. We'll leave all this stuff as is. That's fine. But here's the thing. It's hard to sample something this large. 44,100 samples is a lot. So what we need to do is change this. We need to resample it and sample it down to a lower amount. So we're going to put in a new chop. We're going to add a chop to this line. So I'm going to kind of scroll to make this bigger. And you'll notice that on the right side here, we've got this little green bit here with a little slash through it. I usually call this the butt. I don't think that's the technical term, but this is this chop's butt. And if I hover over the butt and I right click, it will bring up my op create dialog. So now I'm going to go ahead and search for, and once again, that's hovering over, and once this green, let's go ahead and zoom in a little more, once this green butt highlights, so see, I'm over the butt, right click, and it brings up that op create dialog. Let me hit escape. If I do it not there, it brings up a different dialog. So make sure that you're hovering over the butt. Oh, I'm so inappropriate. And right click. I'm going to type in resamp, and that's to get resample, because we need to sample this to a lower amount, to a smaller amount of data so we can easily sample it. So resample right there. Boom. Let's click on it, and we drop it down. And oh, there we go! It's resampled, and it looks a little different, but that's because it's a lot less data, and we can actually work with this now without it being problematic. You'll notice that we have a line going through this, a little connector here. You can actually disconnect these by hovering over them till they turn yellow, right-clicking, hit disconnect. If you ever want to reconnect something or connect 2 different things, you just kind of go over to the thing's butt, click with your normal mouse click, and drag, and connect it into the front butt, I guess. Other than the butt, the front butt? Yeah, that's not, the mouth. Ugh, let's not do that. And you just kind of click and drag to connect it into it. So here we have resample. That's feeling good. That's a lot less. And now I'm going to add one more thing. And I'm just going to hit the tab key, and I'm going to hit null. I'm going to type in null, N-U-L-L. And I want to make sure I'm on the green chop, because chops connect to chops, stops connect to stops, tops connect to tops for the most part. I'm going to click null right there and lay a null down. And I'm going to go ahead and grab the line from this one right here by clicking on its butt with my left mouse click and feeding it into that. So now this null, all that a null does is it basically is an endpoint, or a point to just have something. It's an empty container that shows the data. And there's a reason that I like to end with a null, and that's because of something called referencing. I'll show you that in a minute. So let's just leave this be for now, okay? We have our audio, it's resampled, and it's going into a null. Solid. Now we want to play with something that we will adjust or mess with based on this audio. So let's go ahead and create a sphere. I'm going to hit Tab with my keyboard, and I'm going to move over to this blue thing called SOPs, so the surface operators, the 3-dimensional operators. Now, I'm going to type in SPH for sphere. I don't even need to type in the whole thing, and it shows where sphere is right here. I'm going to click on it, and I'm just going to drop it above here. And we have ourselves a 3-dimensional sphere. It looks beautiful. I love it. I love it. I want to be with it forever. And so let's go over to the butt of the sphere, make sure that blue is highlighted, and right-click and type in null, N-U-L-L. Now there's nulls in pretty much everything, so I'm going to make a null for that, for its endpoint, and I'm moving it over there to look good. All right, we'll come back to this in a sec, but one thing we need to do is we need to actually change this stuff to be able to be rendered, because a sphere is actually a 3D object. It's not a video yet. We need to turn it into video, so we need to render it so we can output it in a way that we want to. And the way we do that is by changing this 3D object into 3D geometry and shooting it with a camera. So what I'm going to do is right here at the null 2, so where the sphere is going to, I'm going to go to its butt, right click. I'm going to go up to comp for composition, and I want to type in geo, G-E-O, for geometry. So this is a kind of operator that turns it into a 3D geometry. I'm going to click on it and drop it. And now you'll see I'm going to zoom out a little. If you hit the H key on your keyboard, actually, it kind of centers everything for you. So now I have this as a geometry. It seems like a lot of extra steps, but life is a lot of extra steps. Come to terms. So what we need to do is take this actual 3D geometry now and shoot it with a camera and light it with a light and then render it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Tab again. Make sure I have comp selected. I'm going to type in C-A-M-E-R-A, camera, and you see there's a camera. Select that camera. Now we have a camera taping, videotaping this geo. I'm going to hit Tab. I'm going to type in light, L-I-G-H-T for light. There we go, light at the left here. I'm going to put in a light. All right, and that's lighting this. And then I'm going to hit, then we need to render it. So I'm going to hit Tab. Render is not in comp. Render is in top, texture operator. So we're using a new kind of operator here. This is the pixels, XY, 2D stuff. And I'm going to type in render, R-E-N-D-E-R. Notice there's a few different kinds of render. Web render, render select, render pass. We just want traditional render. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to lay it down here. And you'll notice we get these little like lines and dots here. That's saying that these things, even though they're not fully connected, they're referencing what we're seeing. All right, so now we have this render, and if we look, it's rendered a nice circle in the middle, in the background of this checkerboard, meaning it's transparent. And we're going to add a null to this. So I'm going to scroll in, go to the butt of render, right click, make sure I'm under top, and click null, type in null, and then I can just hit enter without even selecting it if I have the word null selected. And I'll put this kind of over to the edge in case I want to put stuff in between here. So this was kind of a lot of work just to get this, but the thing about this is that we can actually click this little blue button, if I zoom in here, and it'll display it in the background so we can better see what we're doing. And that's great, and I suggest doing that. Although what I like to do to preview stuff is instead of clicking that display so I can see it, I like to right-click the actual operator and click View, and it'll bring up this window for me. And I can resize this window, make it a little smaller by hovering over the edge and just kind of pulling that down. And I'll just kind of leave this down here for now. And this way, I always have a visual of what I'm working with. It's pretty nice. So let's go ahead and just click H for home and see all of our stuff now. So what do we have going on? We have a microphone, we have a sphere, and we have a camera shooting the sphere. If we want that sphere to be a little bit smaller, we can do things like go into the geo. If I click on the geometry operator, I can change the uniform scale of this. It's good to do it in the actual operator. I could go to the camera, and if I go to camera where translate up here, there's translate, rotate, scale. These are all the physical things you can do to it. It's Z, X, Y, Z is how it works. So left and right. This is left and right, and I'm just going to show you. The thing I'm doing now is I'm hovering over the number, and I'm center mouse clicking it, and I'm dragging. And you can see when you center mouse click, it gives you an option of how much you want to do that, how big or how little. I'm going to hit Command Z a couple times. So this is left, right, and I'm dragging this number up for up and down. I don't really want to do that, but this 5 will give me in and out. So I'm going to take 5 and I'm going to drag it to a 7 to make it a little 8 makes it a little smaller. So there's multiple ways to do different things, and they do them in kind of different ways, just so you know. All right, this is cool. Let's hit Command S to save, because that's an important thing. Let's take a sip of our coffee, because that's a more important thing. And let's start making this interactive. So I'm going to go ahead I'm going to zoom in towards the sphere over here. And between the sphere and the null, I'm going to add a new operator. And to do that, I'm going to kind of hover over the line linking them until it turns yellow, highlighted yellow. And I'm going to right click, and I'm going to put insert operator. Insert will insert an operator between the two. Add operator will add a new kind of line coming off of it. So insert operator, And I'm going to make sure I have SOP selected in blue. And I'm going to type in noise, N-O-I-S-E, noise. Yeah, I'm a nerd. Noise. So here's noise. Let's go ahead and click it. And you can see it's got those links on both sides. So I'm going to just go ahead and drop it down. And look at that. Our actual, our sphere is now a blobby-dooble. A blobby-dooble sphere. I love it. It's one of my favorite operators in the world. So here's the thing though. I want this blobby-doobleness to be changed by the actual microphone, by the audio, to react to audio. So let's go ahead and make sure we have noise selected, all right? Select your noise SOP. And let's look up at the parameters up here. And if you don't see this window, hit P, which brings it up and down. You want that. So there's a lot of different stuff we can play with here, like roughness, Command Z, exponent, so it does like some weird stuff, Command Z. What I want to play with though is amplitude. Amplitude right here. Now I can drag this up and down to make the amplitude like a crazy amount or barely any at all. But I want this amplitude to be changed by my voice. And so this number right here where it's like 2.4, 3.69, I want this to be changed by the microphone input. So we're going to do something called referencing. And it's pretty easy, and it's like the biggest strength of TouchDesigner. It's what gets us there. It's what makes this thing amazing. Now I'm going to go, I'm with my noise selected, my noise SOP selected. I'm going to go to amplitude and I'm going to click on it. And you see what happens with amplitude when I click on it? It gives us this like extra little thing down here. And this is that number, and we can reference a constant, we can reference an expression, an export, or a bind. We'll talk about those a little bit later. But right now, I want to reference this actual chop right here, null 1. So I want this value, this channel value right here, to be inside here. So let's go ahead and kind of zoom into null 1. In order to get this value in here, we need to drag this on, but we need to make this viewer active first. So we can select the actual channel data instead of clicking and dragging and selecting the operator. So down here in the bottom right, you see this kind of star on the operator itself. Click on that, and you'll see it kind of takes away the border. When you do that, if you hover over it, it highlights the channel. So we get a different thing. And once again, it's that little star right there. So I'm highlighting the channel, and I'm going to go ahead with this highlighted. I'm going to click and hold down my mouse button, and I'm going to drag this all the way over to the actual number next to amplitude. I can do it down here, or I can do it number up here. Either way, totally solid. So I'm going to drag it and let go. And then we get this option, export chop, chop reference, current chop value. I'm going to go ahead and put chop reference. Boom. And now it's blue. And this has changed from this gray one of constant to this blue expression. And we see this text down here. And the text is saying op null 1 chan 1. So it's saying which operator null 1. So it's saying we're going to look at the value in null 1, but which channel in null 1? Channel 1. Now, channels, it's referencing the name here, but it can also reference the number of the channel. When there's multiple channels, if there's like 10 channels, you can just go ahead and change this by getting rid of this little bit of chan 1 here. You can make that a 0 and it'll still work because it counts 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Computers count from 0 up. I'm going to hit Command Z. We don't need to do that right now, but we will later. If you notice though, you know what, let's go ahead and just, let me do that again to show you. So I went to my null 1. Uh-oh, I messed up. Let me go ahead and select noise. So noise is selected. I want to leave this selected. With null 1, I'm going to hover over this little viewer active button down here that looks like a little star and click on that. I want to make sure I still have noise SOP selected. And I'm going to just go ahead and hover over channel 1, and now that, because I made it viewer active, it will be green, and I can click, and when I click, I get this kind of pointer mouse, and I drag it, and it'll give me a plus when I'm allowed to drop it somewhere. So I'm going to drop it in the number next to amplitude, and hit chop reference. So now, you can see when I make noise, the noise is based on this. All right, hello! The cool thing about referencing is that this is actually a piece of Python code. So we can add code to it. So at the end of chan 1, I'm going to go ahead and just click my mouse there, hit space. I'm going to make a star, so Shift 8 to make the multiplication star, and I'll multiply it by 10. Boom! And now it's like way big, way big. So it's cool. We actually have code and we can mess with it in there. But I don't want to hard code this quite yet. And hard code is when you code into something. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the 10 and the multiply and just reference this. So instead of changing it in the code itself, let me close this up. I'm going to change it in the actual branch we have going on here. So let's go ahead and click on that viewer active symbol again to make that non-active. If you see, we're getting this kind of like negative, let's see, negative something to about 0.2 or 0.3. That's not a lot of volume. That's not a lot of data. So we want it to be much higher. So after resample, between resample and null, I'm going to add another operator. So I'm going to hover over that string there until it highlights yellow, right click, insert operator, and under chop, under search, I'm going to type in math, M-A-T-H, math. So we're going to put in a math operator, a math chop. When I see math, I click it, and I can just kind of place it down. All right, there it is. I like to keep things a little bit orderly so I know where everything's at. Now here's my math chop. Now if we look at the parameters here, and once again, if you don't see it, hit the P key until it pops up. If we look at the different options or settings for it, the first thing I want to do is make sure that this goes only into the positive, so not into the negative value. So we have a few different menu options over here. In the first one, op, up here, I'm going to take channel pre-op and from off, make it positive. So now it's only going into the positive. I like that. Next, the next menu over that we can highlight inside these settings is mult add. So multiply and add. In here we can do things like bring up the multiply or bring up the add and add a value before things start. I don't want to do that. I'm going to hit Command Z, so I'm not going to pre-add anything. Pre-add 0. But what I'm going to do is go to multiply and I'm going to type in 10. So in multiply 10, so it's far more drastic. In fact, let's go ahead and make this 20. Boom! That works well. But this is kind of janky, right? It's moving really, really fast. Now, I like the fact that it's big and noticeable, but I want it to be smoother. So after math, I'm going to add another operator in here called lag. So I'm going to go and move my mouse over this line until it highlights yellow, right-click, insert operator. I'm going to type in LAG for lag. You can see the lag right here. I'll click on that. Boom, lay it down. Now what lag does, you can tell, it kind of makes things slowly get from point A to point B. So instead of just being fast, quick, boom, 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 it makes it a lot slower. It lags behind. By default, lag is set to 0.2 seconds. So you can see if this little S at the top right here, can be samples, frames, seconds, fractions. It's set to seconds. I'm going to keep it at that. We're not going to do too much in here, but I'm going to change the lag from 0.2 to 1 and 1. So this, so the lag will, it will go out at 1 and it'll come in at 1 second. So boom, boom. So it's a lot smoother and it's reacting to the voice in a cool way. I like that. So that looks solid. Basically, we have our first interactive thing happening. And it's looking awesome, but there's a little more we can do, right? I mean, this is cool, it works, and we can output it, and people can be like, ah, look at me, I'm making stuff. And it's cool, but we want more. So let's hit Command S. Command S to save, because that's super important. Let's go ahead and like add some visual color to this, some interesting imagery and stuff like that. The first thing I'm gonna do, it's reflecting light, but it's not changing based on this changing audio. So I'm going to add an attribute to this. So I'm going to go up to my chain with the stops in it, and after noise, I'm going to go between noise and null 2. I'm going to hover over until it turns yellow, right-click, insert operator, and I'm going to start typing in attribute, A-T-T-R-I-B-U-T-E, and I want to use attribute create. So there's 2 here, attribute, attribute create. Select attribute create. Lay that down. No changes so far, but if we go up to the settings where compute normals is and click that on, boom. Oh, it looks like a weird slimy thing. It's reflecting the light in a really cool way. So the normals are the things that actually produce light, and it's going to compute those, and it's cool. But we can go even farther with this. We can actually add a material to it. So we're going to add a material after I command S to save. We're going to add a material, and we're going to see a new kind of operator. So before that, between attribute create and null2, let's go ahead and hover over until we see it turn yellow, that line there, right click, insert operator, and I'm going to type in MAT for material, and we want a SOP, the blue, a material SOP, right there. Click that and drop it. There's no changes so far because this material is, if we look at the box, the parameters, the material is blank because it's not referencing anything yet, but it will be shortly. So let's go ahead and hit H for home to look at the whole thing. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I have a bigger view of this, but I want to see this line. And now we're going to add a new kind of operator called a material. So let's go ahead and hit Tab. And I'm going to pull this down. And we're going to go over to this yellow material box, so matte. There's a lot fewer options, but materials are the things that we actually put on stuff. So it's like the clothing for 3D geometry. And we're going to use something called a phong, P-H-O-N-G. And it's easy to find because there's fewer, but if you want to type in phong, P-H-O-N-G, click on it, and we're going to drop it in. So the phong, it has a reflective surface, it has highlights, and it's a really good, weird looking thing. So with phong selected, you'll see we have all of these options, and I'm going to go ahead and make this, I'm going to move this over here for now, my preview window. So we have all these different options, but what I want to do is just give it a little bit of color. Don't worry about all this emit and shininess. This is like more advanced stuff. But over where it says diffuse, right next to diffuse, you see this box, and that's a color box. If I click on that color box, it brings up this color palette. Once again, next to diffuse, and that's in the RGB, I have phong1 selected. Click on there, and I can click on a color, and it will actually make my phong, my material, that color. Ooh, I'm a big fan of these like weird blues. So I'm going to make this kind of a nice little weird baby blue. I'll X that out. And you see that box right there is that color? Cool. So we're not going to worry too much about this right now, or any of this stuff, but what we need to do is make this bottom actual geometry reference this phong. So I need to go back to my material SOP right here, my material SOP, and then with that selected, I can just click my phong1 and drag it over the SOP, and you see it will give my material phong1, and if you look, oh, it's this blue color now. So we colorized it, cool. Another way to do that is just type it in there, and that works. And I love that, but it's not enough. I want more texture. I want this to have some grit to it. So we're gonna go ahead and add we're gonna add texture to this phong. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit Tab, and if we want to do a texture, we need a texture operator, a top. So I'm going to click on the purple top over here, and I'm going to type in noise, N-O-I-S-E. Yes, we're using noise down here with the SOP, but this is a different kind of noise, but it uses a lot of the same settings. So I'm going to click on noise, and I'll just drop this down right here. And as you can see, we kind of have this kind of cloudy sort of look to it. And because I'm going to want to do some adjustments to it, let's go ahead and go up to the butt on noise. Make sure that purple butt is highlighted and right click. Let's put in null, N-U-L-L for null. And now we have a null coming off the end of it. So if I want to put anything in between, I can. Nice. So in order to make this phong have this texture, I actually have to add it to the color map here. So the phong1 has a color map. Now I can do that by clicking on null4 and just dragging it over until I get that plus sign next to color map and dropping it in. And you can see we now have this kind of almost cloudy marbly. I'm going to command Z to show you another way. Just click and drag like before over the operator, let go, and it gives us the option of what parameter do we want it to be part of. And I'm going to add it to the color map. So now we have this referencing this color, this texture. Now let's go look at our noise real quick. I'm going to go ahead and click on my noise top, so texture operator of noise, and I'm kind of scrolling into that. Let's look at the options here. I like how this looks, but I want it to be a little grittier. So there are all these options here. We can experiment with like exponent, amplitude. None of that's quite there. Offset, not quite there, but harmonic, spread. Oh, now we're starting to get somewhere. Harmonic spread, harmonics. Ooh, harmonics up to 3. I dig that. Harmonic gain down a little bit. I'm just kind of tweaking some of these settings a little bit until I get somewhere that I like. I like how this looks. It looks gritty, it looks marbly. I'm super into it. But I actually want it to have some motion to it. Let's hit Command S for save. And then we're going to do a little bit of a script. So let's go ahead in our noise. We can go from noise, let's go to transform. Now here we have the translate, rotate, scale, all that stuff from before. And if I middle click and choose one of these and play with it, you can see that it moves stuff around. But the coolest one is over here for translate Z, so it's depth. It just kind of sort of does this nice, cool, interesting stuff when I move it around. But I want it to do it by itself automatically. Actually, let's go ahead and make this a little bigger. So I'm going to go over to this parameter side and hover until I get this double arrow. There we go. I'm going to click and drag it out so we have a little bit more space. Sweet. I'm going to go to translate, this text right here, translate, and click on it. When I do that, that opens up these different bigger things for each of these values. Now, like I said before, we have our constant value, which is gray. If you hover over stuff, it shows what it is. We have our blue expression, where we can write in text, green export, and purple bind. We're worried about expression. Let's go ahead and change this from gray for TZ. Once again, make sure that you clicked on translate to open these 3 drop downs. Let's click on the blue. So now this is this blue color, and we can put in an expression. So the expression we're going to do is we're going to make this thing kind of move around based on the absolute time of our project. And the absolute time is how long our project's been open and running. So if I go ahead and delete this 0, we're going to type in a little code together. Now this is Python code, and it's really simple. It's the same thing we were doing with dragging and dropping operators, but we're referencing something else. So we're going to reference the absolute time. So let's start by typing ABS, all lowercase. Uppercase, lowercase really matters with coding. So abs for both absolute and also how my awesome 6-pack, which I don't really have. Then we want to put in time, but we're going to capitalize the T in time, and then IME lowercase. So abs time. So the absolute time. Then we're going to add a period or a dot. And now we're going to say, what are we referencing from the time? And we're going to type in seconds, all lowercase, SECONDS, seconds. And if I click off, you'll notice that we get this number and it's moving. This is going 4 1000, 5 1000, 6 1000. These are the absolute seconds that this has been running. And now this is moving based on that time. This, you can also do something like frames, F-R-A-M-E, and it moves a lot faster because there are more frames playing than seconds. Let's go ahead, Command Z, make it back to seconds. It's still moving a bit faster than I like, so we can add some code to this. So I'm going to hit a space. I'm going to hold down Shift and hit the 8 key to get that star for multiplication. So multiplied by, let's say, 0.1. So that's, instead of multiplying by 1, 0.1 is 1/10. And when I click off, I get this nice, slow little gradient sort of sky-esque thing. It's a little slow, so I'm going to make it times 0.15. Yeah, that I dig. So we added some moving texture noise to our operator now, and it looks good. Let's go ahead and move this operator back to the bottom. And it looks pretty awesome. So we're referencing a whole lot of stuff. We're using Python code. We can, boom, make stuff happen with the voice. But let's go back to noise up here. Let's select noise. I want to do one more thing before we're done. So with the noise top selected, I'm going to go to the noise menu in its parameters. And you see right here, there's this thing called monochrome, and it's on. That makes it black and white. But if we turn it off, monochrome allows there to be color. Monochrome, no monochrome, it adds color to it. And that color blends in with our actual fawn color. It's pretty cool. So the way I'd like to do this is that if I yell loud enough, if I go like, oh, it'll change it. Oh! but right now I'm clicking it with my mouse. We want it to do it automatically. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a script to do this. And the first thing we need to figure out with the script is what is this monochrome right here? Like this, how do we reference this toggle button? And so what we need to do is let's first create something that we can drag this into to see what the code is. I'm going to go ahead and hit Tab on my keyboard. I'm going to go to Chop, and I'm going to type in constant. So I'm going to make a constant chop, and this allows you to, and let me just click that and put it down. This allows you to create values with this slider thing here, but what I want to do is just use this value to reference what this is actually called, what the, if I click on noise, the monochrome is actually called. So I'm going to zoom into the constant right now, and under Chan1, I'm just going to, next to Chan1, if I click next to it, it opens up those kind of actual blah, 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 the values. And I'll go ahead and click that to an expression. So now with Chan1, once again, that's constant Chan1, I clicked the plus sign to open it, and I move this to the blue for value to blue. I'm going to go to select noise. If we look over at monochrome right there, if we hover over monochrome, right now it says off. And I'm just so you can see, go ahead and click on the word monochrome to open it up. Off is 0, on is 1. So when you toggle something off, it's a 0 value, on is 1 value. So 0 and 1, that's what we're worried about, getting that, playing with those numbers. So I'm going to hover over monochrome, the word monochrome. I'm going to right click, and there's copy parameter. Just click on that. Right now, you've copied the parameter of monochrome. Let's go back to constant. Click there. And under value 0, I'm going to right click and put paste reference. Paste reference. And you'll notice it's now saying op noise2 dot par for dot parameter dot mono for monochrome. So we can see that this is now referencing the monochrome value here. And if I change it, you'll notice that our channel 1 changes from 0 to 1, which is cool, but that's not really what we're doing. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make a script. And this script is going to change the monochrome value in here. Let's hit Command S. Let's get into our last kind of operator for this project. I'm going to hit Tab, and we're going to go all the way over to this pink DAT, or magenta, whatever you decide it is, DAT for data. We're going to type in text, and this will give us a text box. So let's click on text, drop it down, and we have this text box called text1. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger by kind of hovering over the edge till I get the double arrows and dragging it out. And in order to be able to type in here, we need to make this viewer active. So just like before, we go, I'm going to zoom in a little bit, we go to that little star at the bottom right and click it, and that will allow us to type inside of here. So we can type ON rules, but that's not going to do anything. Let's go ahead and delete that. All right, I'm going to go over to my constant right here, and over here where we have op noise2 parameter mono, I'm going to click and drag so I select that. You can also like double click in there. Make sure that's all highlighted. I'm going to hit Command C or Control C on Control C or Command C on Mac. I'm going to go into my text operator, click in there, and hit Control V or Command V on Mac. So now this says op noise2 parameter mono. So now this is saying right here we're looking at this monochrome value. So let's go ahead and make this into a script. Let's go op noise2 parameter mono. Now that we pasted that down, hit space, make an equal sign, and let's make this 0. So if I click off of this and I make the deactivate the viewer by hitting that little button again, I can go and I can right click on here and click run script. And because I run that script, it's saying make this monochrome value 0. If I run it again, it won't do anything because it already is off, it already is 0. So if I click on viewer active and I change this from equals 0 to equals 1 now, click on that to deactivate the viewer again, right click on text1, run script. Now it's back to monochrome. So that's cool, but we want this to be reactive to audio, to somebody's voice, right? So here's what we're going to do. First, I'm going to select the constant. I don't need it anymore. I'm going to hit delete. I'm going to hit H for home so I can see everything. And I'm going to go ahead and take my text operator and just drag it down here so I have it close to where I want it to be. All right, I'm going to move my thing and I'm going to kind of come up here. All right, so before the lag but after the math, I want to add another operator, but I want it to branch off to a new network, so it's not going into this. So I'm going to go ahead and hover between math and lag and until that highlights that little string there, connected them. I'm going to right click. I'm going to put add operator instead of insert. So add operator. Let's just make a null, N-U-L-L, just so we can branch it off with a null. Click null, and now I can decide where to drop this. And notice by doing add operator, it's its own thing. So if I did insert operator and did a null with insert operator, it'd insert it between the two. Not what I want to do. Delete it. So once more, hover over that line, right click, add operator, and then I can choose my null. So here's what I'm going to do. I want to make it so it counts every time I get to a certain audio level. So with the null 5, I'm going to go ahead and right click on null 5's little butt here. Right click, and I'm going to type in C-O-U-N-T, making sure I'm on chop, the green chop, count. And now I'll lay that down. You're going to notice that it's going to start counting numbers. Boom, ba-dum, boom. So right now, if we select count and we look up there at its parameters, and once again, P on your keyboard will bring that up and down, its trigger threshold is 0. Oh, look at how fast that brings stuff up. Let's go ahead and make its trigger threshold right here. Whoops, didn't mean to click on that. Instead of 0, I'm going to make it 3. All right, and boom, boom. So it needs to be a lot louder to get to it. This value needs to get all the way up to a 3, but it's still going kind of fast here. So let's go ahead and go to re-trigger delay, which will delay how fast it allows you. So I'm going to change, allows you to re-trigger it. So I'm going to change this from 0 to 2. And this is set to seconds over to the right. If you look at it, by default seconds, leave it at seconds. So every 2 seconds, it will allow you to change it, but only 2 seconds. There's that delay. Cool, but we still want to do a little more to this. Let's go over to count. So these numbers are cool, 54, 55, but all I'm worried about is a 0 and a 1. Referencing 0 and 1, because 0 and 1, if I look back up at this, the monochrome, it goes to 0 and 1. Those are the numbers it creates, 0, 1, 0, 1. It does not create 54 or 61. That is too high. So with count selected, and if with the count chop selected, over here in its parameters, I select the count menu. There is an option called limit. It's set off. Let's go ahead and click on that and change it to loop min max. That loops between a minimum number and a maximum number. By default, it's 0 and 10. We're going to change this 10 to a 1. So it loops between 0 and 1, and I keep clicking on things. Now, it's in this weird kind of phase of 0.7, point whatever, so we're going to go ahead and reset this. Over here at the bottom of count, there's a reset, but there's this pulse. We can pulse reset. And now, boom, boom, it will go back and forth between 0 and 1 every time it hits a level of 3. All right, and now the last bit of things we need to do, let's hit Command S to save, to be safe. We need to make our script reference count 1. Actually, let's go ahead and add a null to the end of this, because that's just a good thing to do. I'm going to right-click count 1, that little butt, and I'm going to add a null. So now we're looking at null, chan1, null, sweet. So let's go up to our text that we brought down here. Let's make it active. So by clicking that little star down there, op noise2 parameter mono equals 1. Now what we want to do, instead of equaling 1, we want it to equal null 6. So let's go ahead and delete 1. We need to reference this operator using Python code. It's very similar to right here, but we're going to type it in together. So first, what are we referencing? An operator. OP for operator. All right, next we want to do a left parenthesis so we can name the operator. So I'm going to hold down Shift and hit 9, and that's a left parenthesis. and then I'm going to go ahead and make a single quotation, and I want to reference which operator. So which operator am I referencing? Null 6 down here. It's this one. Make sure you put it there, or you can do count 1, but you know, null 6 is the good one. NULL 6. Now I need to do a second parentheses, or a second single quotation, and I need to close the parentheses. So now what I'm referencing, which operator is null 6, and now I need to tell it which channel, which number it's referencing. So I'm going to do a left bracket, and I get there by right next to the letter P. Right to the right of the letter P on your keyboard is a bracket, left and right bracket. Just hit the left bracket, and I'm going to go ahead and now I'm going to hit the single quotation, CHN1 for channel 1, another single quotation, and then close bracket. So now I have a script that says that the monochrome setting is going to equal null 6. So if I go ahead and I get rid of the viewer active, and I right click on this text and hit run script, it'll change it. Let's do that again. It wasn't changing it before because it was already on that thing. So when I hit right click run script, it'll change it to whatever number this is. Boom. But here's the thing, we can't have people we can't have people clicking inside of our network. We want to do it by the audio, by the loudness. So we actually need to make it so our script is set off. The script is run by this value changing. So we're going to put first Command S to save. We're going to use a new operator. And it's going to be, so let's hit Tab. We're going to go into our DAT. So this is a new DAT operator, and we're going to look for one called chop execute. So let's type in CHOP, chop execute, right here. So that means it will execute or run a script based on a chop's value. I'm going to click on it and drop it down. Now what we need to do is tell it which chop is it referencing. And it's null 6 that it's going to, whenever this number changes in null 6, this should execute. So I'm just going to click null 6 and drag it over top of chop execute, and I get that little plus mark, and boom, when I drop it, we get that link. If you look up here, it made this say null 6 too. Let me hit Command Z. If you look up here at chop 6, when I drag and drop it over that, it works. Command Z, I can also drag and drop it up there, and it works. So we want to make it change or run the script anytime the value of null 6 channel 1 changes. So we have a few different options, from off to on to off, well off, or value change. So up here in the parameters, when you have chop execute selected, we want to make sure value change is set to on. That's the one we're going to use. It's usually set to on by default. Then we're going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit so we can see inside our chop execute. Now we have a few different areas. So off to on to off, on value change. I'm only worried about on value change. So we're going to delete the rest of these. So let's go ahead and make this viewer active, the chop execute one viewer active by clicking that little star. Boom. And everything above on value change, I'm going to go ahead and click and drag and highlight. And I can go ahead and just delete that because I'm only worried about this bit of information. Let's zoom out a little bit. And now what we need to do is paste our script, our code, between this def on value change and return. So I'm going to go up to my text box right here. I'm going to make it viewer active by clicking the little viewer active thing. Click and drag to highlight that text, all of it, the whole expression, and hit Control-C to copy, or Command-C if you're on a Mac. Then I'm going to go down to my chop execute. I'm going to place my mouse right there before return. I'll hit the enter or return button and then go back up one. So there's a space here, and I'll hit Command V to paste that script. So one thing that's important to know is that since we're using Python, the spacing and returning and which line it's on matters a lot for a script to work. So if you accidentally pasted it like that, hit Tab to get it there. It should be lined up right there. All right, I'm going to go ahead and deactivate that viewer, and oh my gosh, take a look. It's working. Boom, boom, boom. If it's not working for you for some reason, look at your text and make sure you're not missing something like a parentheses, because when that happens, boom, you get an X. If you get that X, it means something written in your code is probably off. Trust me, it's usually user error or designer error. I'm going to put that back. Boom, 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 and hit Command S. So now we have it that I feel like this is actually a little bit low. So let's go back to count and go to trigger. Instead of 3, I'm going to make it 5. So if I really want to trigger this, I have to get loud. Oh, ah, oh, ah. Might even want to make it as high as 10. That might be way too loud. Ah, oh, ah. And we have this awesome, weird, interactive thing. Command S, everybody. Let's go ahead and turn off the viewer active on there. So that's pretty fun. We have some fun stuff going on. There's a few other things. There's a lot more that you can do. And that referencing that we were doing, where we're dragging values from one thing to another, that is so strong. So another thing, and this is good. If you're in my class and you're taking my class, save this and send me this project file and you're solid. But I encourage you to explore a little bit more, to play with referencing a little bit more. Like, if I'm going to go into between my render and my null, I'm going to hover over this string between render and null, and I'm going to hit insert operator. And in tops, I'm going to, let's say, blur, B-L-U-R. I'm going to find a blur, click on that, and lay that down. The filter size is 7. You can see it blurs things out. It's pretty cool. But I can reference things like blur as well. So let's go ahead and see where we have lag and null here. Uh-oh, I accidentally highlighted something I didn't mean to. Lag and null. I can just go ahead and drag and highlight both of these, hit Command C and Command V to copy and paste them. And I can make a new thing here. So between lag and null, I'm going to go ahead and insert an operator, a math, and I'll make the math, I'll go from math to multiply, and I'll multiply that really big. Blah! And I can go ahead and then take this null 7, make it the viewer active, highlight my blur so I can see it up here, and then I can drag this filter size. Blah! Oh. So we can blur based on that. Blur, blur. And that's kind of fun. I'm going to change the blur from horizontal and vertical to just horizontal. Blur. Maybe just vertical. Blur. It's not making that much of a difference here. So that's some things you can do. There's just a lot of different things you can reference. I highly recommend taking a moment and try referencing some stuff. So like maybe in the noise here, where we have other stuff, maybe take the original resample and just click and drag that into something like period. And see what that does. Ooh, Command Z, don't love that a lot. Let's try Harmonics. Didn't do much. Maybe this same math lag that I'm using for blur, I can use that for roughness. Oh wow, that's crazy. That might be way too much. Command Z on that. Let's take the less one to roughness. It gets so weird. But yeah, this is how you make interactive stuff. And this is audio reactive, and it's super rad. Command S. I hope it was helpful, and I hope y'all learned something or are ready to start playing with this weird stuff. This weird stuff. Oh wait, one more thing. Let's add right here under blur, next to blur, I'm going to insert an operator, and I'm going to do Hsv Adjust. Oh yeah, I like Hsv Adjust. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and with Hsv Adjust, this null right here. I'm going to hit Command C, Command V, and this is how you start to get really messy, but you also just start breaking stuff off and doing new things. And between math and null 8, I'm going to insert an operator called speed. So a speed chop. And you'll notice speed chop counts, and it counts up, which is cool. So now with null 8, I'm going to use this. I'm going to go to Hsv Adjust, and I'm going to go to Hue Offset here. I'm going to click and drag that, chop, and the more we talk, the more it changes the color. Let's go into my speed chop to be safe, and I'm going to take this limit to loop. Minimum 0, maximum 360 is what I'll do, because that's how far it goes, and that way it won't stop. Command S, and I want this to be a little more extreme, so I can actually, between this math and this speed chop, I'll insert a math. Hope you're not all following along like crazy here. Let's go ahead and multiply this by 10. Holy moly. So now it's kind of changing its color based on how much the talk is happening. Boom. And I might even multiply it by 10, but pre-add negative 10. Ooh, that's a lot. No, pre-add, no. Multiply 10, let's make that 0. Post-add negative 10, maybe negative 5. So it kind of stays closer to still when I'm not talking. Yeah, and so that's the beginning. This is the start of something beautiful. Have fun, everyone.